flew towards the back, and that's where he landed, sitting in the seat. So we decided that we needed to call 911 right away. So we did that, and we started to look at him, and he was wheezing, or not wheezing, he was snoring. And I thought that was really weird, but we later on figured out that his lung had collapsed, and that's why he was making that noise. He had blood on his head gushing from right here, and we just took a towel and we held it there. We didn't know what the damage was because from the outside he looked completely fine, like not a lot of scratches besides the bleeding on his head. Everything else looked fine. It looked like he was just sitting there. So it was pretty eerie when we found out that it was so devastating. So
yeah, I think I'm getting emotional listening to you talk about this. I didn't think this was happening. I'm not gonna lie, this is crazy. Just the dynamics, I think, when Lexi calls me and you hear something and it seems simple, and then I'm a long ways away. So I'm like, I'll just meet you there, have my sister go. She'll kind of travel with the kids. You have to also understand that their dad and I don't really talk much. So when I walk in a hospital room and our son's in a place where we can't get to, and him and I aren't really communicating, that there's another layer. As my sister would say, your life is an onion, and every layer that you peel, it makes you cry until you get to the center of this. And so I just felt like that's kind of where we were at. So we walk in the hospital. I called my family. I'm like, hey, I think you should come. It could be bad. They were giving us no information at the time. And as we're all kind of standing around, Laurel and I for sure kept going up to the receptionist and like, hey, my brother's here. Can we go back and see him? And they're like, no, John Doe, John Doe, John Doe. And Lexi's like, I gave him his name. I don't know why it would be a John Doe. But we found out later that they took him via ambulance because they didn't think he was going to survive. And actually one of the firefighters rode with him because he said that if he were going to die, he didn't want him to die alone. And, these are little things that you kind of hear later on. And in the time, we're standing in the ED department. My family comes in. And we're just speechless. We don't know what to say. We don't know what's going on. They won't let us back there. It was like 2 hours. I want to say about 2 hours before we're physically able to go back. They had a chaplain was the first person that came in and spoke with us and was like, I'm here to talk to you about your son. He's been in a terrible car accident. He's got severe brain damage and a spinal cord injury. And I cannot explain to you emotions. I just can't do it. There's no way to place me in that spot. So his dad and I went back, and when we were the first two that went back, and when we see him, he looked broken. I mean, his body was not laying straight, and he was hooked up to every kind of machine that you can imagine. And I think my first thought is just to start praying like crazy. I mean, I walked out of that room, and I just told my siblings and my kids, I said, hey, you're going to see Bobby. He's not going to look good. I know hearing is the last thing to go if he were to pass away. So everybody just say how much you love him. I think encourage him, help him kind of fight through this, whatever it is that he's going through, because we obviously, he couldn't communicate with us. So my sister, who writes books and speaks a lot, I just said, hey, can you get prayer warriors going, which is kind of how the Miracles for Bobby Facebook page started. And she's like, I'm just going to send it out to everybody and just get everybody praying, because we're firm believers in the power of prayer and in numbers. And I didn't know what else to do. I mean, really, there was nothing we could do. We took people back in threes, and then we had to kind of start hurrying because they're like, hey, we got to do MRIs and CAT scans, and he's got to go to surgery, and just all these things that, we just didn't know what to expect. So everybody, I think, was able to go in and see him. And then his dad and I walked down to the MRI. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're walking down this really long corridor. It's dark. I haven't spoken to this man in months, and here we are knowing that we're going to be making life or death decisions together about our son. And they take Bobby in there, and we sat in that room for, I don't know, a couple hours, not saying a word. I mean, legitimately not saying a word to each other, because there was nothing to say. And when they brought us out and they showed us the images of his brain and all the damage that was done to it, I mean, I was shocked. They said it was a D.E.A. brain injury. I can't pronounce it.
Diffused axal injury.
Diffused axal injury. They said it's the most severe brain injury that you can get, and that the odds of him recovering from the brain injury alone was slim to none. And then he has the spinal cord injury. 5 was damaged, 6 was shattered, and 7 was damaged. And then they said that because the brain and the spine together were fighting each other, that he wouldn't, they just didn't think anything was going to come of it. I mean, they're like, prepare for the worst. I mean, really, that's what they said to us. So we go into a room of, by then, 30, 40 people maybe had showed up at the hospital. People started just in droves just showing up. I mean, it was insane how many people showed up. And you just kind of go out and tell this group of people that, hey, my son's been in a car accident, he's probably going to die within the next few hours. And if he does survive, who we all know as Bobby is not going to be there anymore. I mean, when people tell you these things, I don't know, I can't even explain it. It's hard to say. So he went to surgery, and the doctor performed the only surgery that they could perform. They put a metal brace in his neck, and they pulled the skull out of his brain, and they sutured it, and they said, this is it. This is all we can do. We've done everything we can do, and we just wait. And Bobby was in his own self-induced coma. We didn't have him on anything. So we played the waiting game. And I don't know how you guys, I've got pictures of you guys sitting or sleeping. I mean, we didn't sleep for days. So they're in the lobby. Hundreds of people came to the hospital. I mean, literally hundreds. And they would spend 8-10 hours a day there. And when Bobby came out of surgery, there was nothing we could do. I mean, nothing. You waited. I mean, and you only let so many people in. At first they were like, oh, your whole family can't be in the PICU. And I'm like, well, he's got lots of siblings.
Lots of family.
We're all going to be in the PICU. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, let's make that happen. So it took a little bit of mom being mom, but we got that figured out. And, you know, I told everybody from the beginning that I wouldn't go home till Bobby went home. And that was, that was just something that we all knew that was kind of an unsaid thing. So nobody ever asked me to go anywhere. Mom was always going to be there. And the kids kind of came and went, you know, in between the lobby and there and talking to people. So many people, reporters, prayer warriors, Facebook posts. I mean, just lots of information. And we really didn't have anything to give. So we just started praying like crazy. I mean, I sat next to Bobby probably 72 hours straight and just whispered in his ear solid just how much I loved him, what a good kid he was, you know, what God has got for him. I mean, this is somebody that has struggled his whole life. And I was like, man, of all kids, why my kid? Why my kid that has already been through so much? Why are we putting him through more? It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand it. And then I've always been a good person telling people that God only gives you what you can handle. Not that I want to say that anymore.
You can handle a lot now.
Yeah, because he thinks I can handle a lot. And it's devastating. And so I'd say the first week or so was kind of really touch and base. I don't know if you guys want to talk about how you felt about it when you went in, you know, when you first saw him. I mean, you guys are siblings. I'm a mom. It's different, so I don't.
It was really scary. I remember my mom just telling, like, don't cry because he can hear everything and you don't want him to be scared or anything. And so I just remember sitting outside looking at him and like, don't cry. I'm just bawling. I'm like, don't cry. And then you go up to him and you're just bawling and you just love on him. It was awful seeing him like that.
Yeah, I don't know that you can't help but, you know, you want to be strong. Yeah, you do. You want to be strong. You're sitting there next to somebody that you love dearly and that you would give your life for, and there's nothing you can do. And as a mom, that's the worst position to be in. I mean, for any of my children, I want to help them, and to know that I couldn't do that was hard for me to do. So we came across the second, maybe it was the third day about into it. The doctor came to us and said, hey, he's not doing anything. He's not doing well. You need to contemplate taking him off the ventilator. Well, we all knew if we took him off the ventilator, he would die. I mean, that was pretty obvious. And I was like, man, it's been like 3 days. I don't feel like I can make that decision. And when we went in, I said, what on him is working? What's functioning? He's hooked up all these machines. I don't understand. I'm reading numbers. He's got a bolt in his head for brain pressure. He's got all these things. And they're like, well, the one thing that's working really well on this kid is his lungs. And I think that was the turning point for me. I think that's the point where I just went, God wants this kid to live, because when he said his lungs are working, Bobby doesn't have lungs that work. They have never worked. So to tell me that his lungs are working, it didn't make any sense. So I would go up to Bobby and I'm like, dude, your lungs are working. You got to help me. You know, you got to keep pushing. You got to keep breathing. So I told the doctor we were going to hold off. Another week passes by. You can only keep a ventilator in for a certain amount of time before they have to put in a tracheotomy. And that's kind of a scary decision too, because I'm thinking, does he want to trach in? Is it going to be for the rest of his life? Is it temporary? There's just so many things going on. And so his dad and I were trying to make this decision, and I said, they're like, we'll take him off the ventilator and see what he does. So we leave the room, we go down the hall, they take him off the ventilator, and then they come back in. They're like, hey, we want you to see what he looks like not on the ventilator. I have never in my life seen my kid dying, and he literally in front of me was gasping for air. It was the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and I was like panicking. I'm like, put him back on it. He's obviously like his body was convulsing and he was struggling, and I was shocked that they were showing me this. And I'm like, I believe you didn't have to teach me a lesson like that. You could have said, he didn't breathe very well. I've been like, I totally believe what you're saying. So we saw and it's really kind of invasive to put a ventilator back in. So they're, we left the room, they're struggling, trying to get it back in. And I'm like, hey, we're not testing that anymore. We decided he does not function on the ventilator. We decided to put the tracheotomy in, and the doctor was just like, once you make that decision, that's the decision for the rest of his life. He'll be alive for the rest of his life. You're making a decision to keep him alive. He's like, your kid's going to be a vegetable. He's not going to do anything. He's not going to walk. Is this the choice you want to make? He's like, if it was my kid, I would not want him to make this decision. And it wasn't his kid. It was my kid. And Bobby's laying there. His lungs are working. The one thing that's not supposed to be working. So we put it all in. It was all the cards on the table. We sat in a round table with like 20 doctors and everybody telling me, oh, we've done more MRIs and more CAT scans and the damage is worse and the kid, he's never going to be who he was. Even if he comes to life, he won't be Bobby, as you remember. All these things, and I'm bawling at a table. My sister's taking notes, and I think Robert's in shock. And I just looked at the doctor. I said, this isn't your kid. This is my son sitting. We're talking about my son. My son's down the hall. Your son, you go home to your kids. I don't. And I don't feel like I'm in a place where I can give up on this kid. And so after that meeting, we kind of made the decision not to have those meetings anymore. There was nothing else to talk about. There was nothing else that they could do. They said they'd done everything, and we wait. It was a waiting game. We wait for Bobby to do whatever Bobby's going to do. And we had no idea what that looked like. And so we would give him baths at night, and we would try to make him as comfortable as possible all day long. Lexi would poke at his eyes and lift his fingers and just try to get him, because I was always told that if you move them around, that their body will start to remember, it'll start to come to. So I was like massaging them, lotions. I'm like, when the girls would come in, I'm like, well, we were told not to play music, but we did play music.
I think the nurses thought we were crazy.
Well, yeah. Because we wouldn't leave him alone. It was always just, anything. I wanted him to respond. I just wanted something. I would play music quietly in his ears, or like he's got a brain injury, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, he loves the song. I think he'd really like it. He's a music person. So I'm just, I'm thinking of things that would help Bobby kind of come to. Good Shepherd Church did a prayer vigil with a lot of the younger, I want to say, kids. I didn't go to that one. You guys can maybe talk about that a little bit.
It was awesome. I was really surprised on how many kids showed up.
Yeah, there was a lot of kids.
There was so many, and everybody from that church loves Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby's a lot of friends. He's always, he'll tell you that right now. He definitely got a lot of friends.
I never knew how many friends this kid had, and he has a lot.
Yeah, he's got a lot of friends. And so just the outpouring of the community and stuff. And then we did a prayer vigil outside of Emmanuel Hospital where we talked. I want to say it was about 2 hours was that one. Yeah. A couple hundred people showed up. I think the biggest thing that I wanted to say in that was, at that point, Bobby had the trach had just been put in, and we'd made the decision to keep him alive. And we didn't know what that looked like. We didn't know what alive looked like. And so I told everybody down there when I was speaking that vigil that however God wanted to give Bobby back to me, whatever that looked like, didn't matter to me. I wanted him alive. Like, that was my biggest thing. So if Bobby was in a bed or in a wheelchair or or whatever that looked like, it didn't matter. And I just wanted my son back. And I just felt like he had bigger purposes for him. I felt like, Bobby had struggled his whole life. That why now? Why take it in such a kind of a horrific way? So after the vigil, it was like game on. I mean, the kids and I, every day we rallied. Lexi would pray over him every day. We would do all these different things, and we didn't stop. I mean, it was literally, like
people would come in and they're like, we can feel like the presence of like God and angels in this room, and we're like, yes. Thank goodness, it's working.
The visitors were really rare. It was hard to get people in there, and people that we didn't know wanted to see Bobby, which was challenging because we had to juggle family and friends, and everybody wanted to see him. They're like, hey, you got to stop. We had the police downstairs like escorting people around. There was so many. They're like, you got to like stop the flow of people. This is insane. But they would come in and pray over Bobby and anoint him to the point where they were like, at one point, shaking him. And wake up! And like start walking
him around.
And we're just like, oh, don't touch him. He's got a brain injury. We were just like, we were panicked. But she was, and then I can't think of that woman's name.
Sweet lady. I have no. I can't remember.
And she said, and she goes, "It's okay, not today. He will walk one day." Like she goes, I'm not even worried about this kid. And here I'm thinking, are we looking at the same person? Because this kid hasn't moved in weeks. So I don't know what we're talking about here. But so she just, all these people just covered him. It was like they put a cloak over him. It was crazy. And we did that. We're in the PICU for almost 6 weeks. So we did that for 6 weeks of doctors coming in, and they literally would come in and pinch his earlobe so hard that I'm hurting, thinking,
like bruise.
I'm like, oh, maybe that's a little hard. He goes, nope, nothing. You're not getting anything out of him. And they would walk out. I mean, every day they would have their rounds, and they would do this, and they would drag this thing up and down his leg and his foot, just nothing. And finally, it came to the point where I was like, hey, if you're going to come in and tell Bobby every day that he's not going to make it, I would prefer that you do that in the hallway because he can hear. And I only wanted positive around him. I only wanted, good stuff. I didn't want anything bad. So the doctor started conversing outside the hallway and not coming in and saying anything in front of him, which I think was a good thing for us. We had one nurse in particular, a night nurse. All nurses are good people, don't misunderstand this at all. But when all day long you've sat next to this kid and you bawled your eyes out and you're exhausted and you can't take anymore, and they switch shifts and somebody comes in and tells you that your kid is in an infantile stage and how dare you keep him alive, and this is a horrible thing that you're doing. And I'm taken away. These girls start bawling uncontrollably, and I'm just like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like, where did you come from? So we politely excused ourselves out of the room, and we left. And we don't normally all leave Bobby. Usually somebody stays behind. We all left the room, and I took the girls upstairs, and we just prayed and discussed the conversation of him being in an infantile state, and discussed different things, that kind of how we wanted to go. And then we come back downstairs, and Bobby is, he's still doing his thing, which is nothing, basically. He's still laying there, and the nurse is all of a sudden super nice. Like, she's like, I apologize. I'm really sorry for talking like that. And we were shocked. We didn't know what to, we never said anything to her. And she all of a sudden was just the nicest nurse. And she did a great job. And that was the first night, I think, that Bobby started showing reflexive movement. So he would, we call it purposeful. They call it reflexive. And the difference is your body automatically does things on its own that just naturally does it, and it's not something he's intending to do. Well, he would lift his arm up, he would stretch. I mean, there was just a couple things that he would do, and we were like, oh, he's moving. And they're like, no, that's reflexive. That's just what he does. I'm like, no. I think this is different. He would find things and pull at them and
mess with everything.
And we would see them. So then I was told by one nurse, she's like, write it down. If you write it down, then you can explain to the doctors, because I think they thought we were nuts, honestly. I think they thought we'd had so many people coming in here, so many people praying over this kid. He was all over the news. Everywhere people were like, okay, this family's crazy.
I think we looked a little nuts.
I think we did too, but I think that we were determined to get Bobby where he needed to be. I think there was we were in the fourth quarter of this game, and there was no way we were leaving that hospital without Bobby walking out of that. I mean, that was just kind of our motto. I mean, that's how we felt.
Well, I think in the beginning we were more like asking why, like when we prayed, like, why is this happening? Like, how could this happen to us? And then once we started praying for more of like peace beyond understanding, just like give me peace, and like, even though I don't understand what's happening, I think that's when things really started to change for us. Because instead of going into a room every day and we just start crying and bawling, we were actually we treated him like he was still our brother, like he was still there. So we would poke him, we would mess with his eyelids, we would just we
were dancing around the
room. Yeah, we were literally dancing around the room like he was awake or something. So that's why I feel like some of the nurses were just like, are you guys okay? We're like, yeah, we're just having a good time, we had such faith that God was gonna heal him, and he was gonna be okay, that there was no point to be sad about it anymore, because he had assured us that he's gonna be okay.
He gave us peace.
Yeah, he gave us that peace beyond understanding that we had been asking for. And so once we started changing our mindset, that's when things started to really change.
So Lexi then read off the mindset that heals, and I was going to bring it and I forgot.
I forgot it too.
So she read off the mindset that heals, and we would read it every day over this kid. And somebody we'd met a family whose son had been in a similar accident, and she said, thy will be done. I think that was really hard for
Yeah,
these kids
that was
because
super.
you're frustrated with the situation, you're frustrated with the dynamics, you're frustrated that you can't do anything about it, and you're thinking, how dare someone tell me thy will be done? You're like, really? Could you tell me something else? But this was a family that had come to something that had been in a similar situation, so we ran, everybody would come and want to encourage you, but for somebody that's not been there, they don't know what to say, you don't know how to react because you're just not in there. So it's hard. And I think really, as Bobby sits there all nice and quiet because he doesn't remember any of this. Sorry, bud. He was sleeping for most of this.
Yes, it was.
These kids, it affected them so much. Larissa had to switch schools, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how.
When I switched schools, I went from my old school, Wilson, to my new school, Parole. And being back in that environment where Bobby had gone to school was kind of surreal in a way because the people knew him there. I hadn't gone to school with him since elementary school. So, all of them would talk about him, and I'm like, wow, that's, awesome. I haven't talked to him in a really long time, but I get that. And it was kind of comforting in a way to know that these people knew him, and they could kind of understand, and it was just really nice.
So, Larissa switches schools. Laurel's job is dealing with people with brain injuries and stuff, and you can kind of explain how you felt about that and what that did for you?
It was hard. I used to work at OHSU as it's called Lift Team, so it's basically a CNA on the ICUs, and I see people coming in with accidents, horrible accidents, all day long, and working with them, and then to see my brother in a really bad accident was sorry.
It's hard to talk about it.
It was really hard to not be everybody was so positive, and I feel like I was a little negative because I see not great outcomes all the time. So Lexi definitely was like, we can't think like that, we need positive, and I'm surrounded by it every day. So it was a lot harder, I think, on me because I saw it so much.
So there was some conflict between the two of us.
Yeah.
Because she was kind of being more well,
negative Nancy.
Yeah, negative. She's like, well, if you look at statistics, that's not really going to happen. But I was more of we're not thinking like that here. We don't have time for that. So God is going to heal him, and I don't have time to talk about statistics right now with you. So.
It was just hard because I just saw it.
Right. She worked in it.
And for a year and a half, that's all I saw was these people coming in with accidents just like Bobby's, and they didn't make it. And so I'm looking at Bobby, I'm like, he's so broken. I was like, man, he's not going to make it. But definitely having Lexi pull it together, I was like, I'm trying. This is hard.
So that's when the mindset that would heal really came into play, because every day I read over him just thank you, God, that he is walking and talking like before. Even though he was laying in a bed in a coma, literally hadn't moved in weeks on end. But I was still just, thanking God for healing his brain, healing his spine, every little detail I can think. And now that we're almost 8 months into it, I look at Bobby and everything that I'd read over him is true. And I'm like, that's incredible. If only everybody had that mindset when tragedy really hit them, is that how much power our words really have. So speaking that over Bobby not only gave comfort to all of us, but I think it's really played a huge part in just showing God that we're not giving up. We're thanking you for the healing that we already know is to come. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say the same thing, that if the mindset that heals, I think that was probably the biggest blessing that we had to pray over this kid. And in the beginning, it's hard to pray it because she literally is saying, thank you that he's walking, thank you he's talking, and you're praying that over someone that is not moving, literally is not doing anything, and machines are doing it for him. So you're praying this, and in the back of your head going, am I losing my mind today? Because that's what you feel like. And after so many weeks of the same thing, you feel like you're losing your mind. So that was, I think, definitely a big turning point for all of us, was getting the mindset that heals and kind of really focusing on that. Yeah. I want to say also kind of talk a little bit about leaving the hospital, because a lot of people don't understand that, I lived in the hospital the entire time. I didn't leave it all. These kids went home, which was hard. It was hard to get in a car, hard to leave their brother. You don't know what's going to happen when you're going to be gone. You don't know if mom's going to call you and say, hey, come back, something's happening. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can kind of, it was around 4th of July, so that didn't help me.
Yeah, well, every time we left the hospital or home, we would see all these people just so happy, they're just living their lives. And you almost get kind of angry at them, how dare you be so happy when our lives are literally stopped. It's falling apart, and it doesn't affect anyone else really except for our immediate family. So that was hard for us, because you're just like, you feel bad because you're angry at everybody, but you can't help it because, like, your whole life is literally changed and you don't know what to do. So everything was just too fresh. It was just hard leaving.
I remember, like, every time we went in the car, we would just cry.
Yeah, we cry all the time.
We would get in the car, we're not going to cry, we're not going to cry. And we're just
yeah,
bawling.
we're like, is today the day that we don't cry? And then we just start crying. We're like, okay, guess not. Guess
today.
we'll pray for tomorrow.
We'll try again later.
Well, and I think, like they said, it's hard when people's lives go on. Your life stops. It literally stopped that day. On June 26th, our life, it ended. And none of these kids, not any one of them, is the same person they were when this happened. There's no way you can be. It has changed every single one of these kids. And they will never look at life the same again. And it was one of those things that, you leave and you literally walked outside the hospital and life started again. It was almost surreal. It was like being in a movie. I remember I had to move my car because it had been there for like almost a month. They're like, hey, you gotta take your car home. So I drove my car home, and I don't even remember getting there, how I got there, how I got home, how I even made it back to the hospital. And you couldn't wait. You're like running back in there because you just want to get next to Al, even though he's not doing anything. Didn't really matter because you just wanted to be next to him. So I think those were just as...
It was easier being in the hospital.
It
was really
absolutely was easier being in the hospital.
It was safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. That's a great word for it. It was safe in the hospital. The hospital was a bubble. It was just, nobody could touch you. You were, and you could put as much into this kid as possible. When you left, it was different. And, Laurel quit her job because she wasn't able to contain, work and be able to come there. And my job was just a godsend, and said, hey, you take all the time you need with your kid, and we're going to take care of you and your family, which they absolutely have done. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. I mean, we were put here in this horrific situation, but the things that unfolded in hindsight of it is incredible. I mean, we just were given so much.
I kind of want to go back to the community and like all the prayers and stuff, but also with all the fundraisers that people did.
Good point.
And the t-shirts.
I'll let you guys talk about that because a lot of that was kid driven. So between stickers and t-shirts and all that kind of stuff.
So many of Bobby's friends made like super neat t-shirts for Bobby that like had his name on it or something that Bobby would say on the shirt, and they just sold them. And then one of his friends, I think his name's
Which
Bailey.
friend?
Billy Buck.
Yeah, Bailey Buck. He made these stickers that says hashtag Ride for Bobby, and almost every car in Gresham
has the sticker.
Had a sticker that said hashtag Ride for Bobby on it, which was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, just so many people. We did a silent auction fundraiser. Yeah. That, I mean, just people. I mean, the outpouring of people that I have no idea, I've never met in my life, would come up to me. They'd be like, "Hey, I'm praying for you, or I'm following you, or I want to help you and your family out." We had dinners brought to us at the hospital. I mean, gift cards. So for me, because I didn't leave the room ever, and kids are always hungry, because crisis or not, they're always hungry. And people give us gift cards, to a restaurant or whatever. I'm like, here, take a gift card, go get something. I mean, it was
so helpful.
Yeah, that was super helpful. And then while we were in there, people started reaching out to us for help. Almost, it was kind of weird because
it was really early.
It was early on, and I'd never been through this before, so I couldn't help anybody. I was not in a point to be able to help somebody as much as I wanted to. And they're like, "Hey, what did you do? How did you, make it through this?" And I'm like, I didn't. I don't. I really personally have nothing to do with this because I'm a mom, and I just did what a mom would do, and I just doted and loved on my kid, and prayed that I could also, as I'm catering to Bobby, not forget the rest of the children. I think that's another thing that people are like, "How are the other kids doing?" Because you're so focused on the incident, and then you've got 3 other kids still at home that still need to go, especially this one whose birthday happened, and then she goes to school, and I mean, just so many things to juggle, and try not to kind of lose focus of everything because you don't want to just solely have it on one thing.
But the thing about us is we're so close, we're literally like peas in a pod. Like, we're always together. So for my mom to focus on just Bobby, it didn't affect us because that's what we were focusing on too. So we never had a moment of like, oh, mom's not paying attention to me, because we knew that all the attention needed to be on Bobby at this moment, and we were totally fine with that. So every time anyone asks that, we were just like, it's like, we're not mad about it because she's doing what's right, and that's what I would want her to do if I was in that situation. So
yeah, and that's as a mom, that's just hard because you want to give each kid that what they need, and I knew Laurel was going through a job situation, and Lexi's going through, she was blogging, and she had seen the accident, and Larissa's going through school. I mean, I knew all these things were happening, and so it's hard to just go, oh, let me put a little bit here, and kind of move my puzzles around and put it together and hope that it works out. And fortunately, I've been blessed with amazing children. I couldn't say enough good things about him, and to have them kind of understand and be okay with it and get it, just, that made it that much easier for me to be able to kind of make the situation okay. Mm-hmm. I think we should kind of talk a little bit about making up to one story real quick. I'll say that we didn't, and some of these things aren't on Facebook, so I'm trying to kind of remember things that happened that were kind of behind the scenes. When Bobby was in the PICU, they had said that he needed to go to a care facility, a skilled nursing home. And we own skilled nursing homes, his family does, and I knew what that meant. And I was like, I'm not putting my 17-year-old son in a skilled nursing home. And they're like, well, we have pediatric ones. And I'm like, I don't care, pediatric or not, I don't want him there. I want him on the 8th floor. Everybody was like, 8th floor, so we're going to go, that's rehab. So they're like, he needs to respond, and he just wasn't responding. And so they said, if you can't get him to respond, then we'll help you get him in a nursing home, and then when he gets better, we'll take him out of the nursing home and we'll bring him back and he'll go rehab. And I mean, they made it sound just fabulous, and I was like, not today. Then none of that sounded fabulous to me. So I hired an attorney, and some people were like, oh, I can't believe you brought an attorney into it, but you're so overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with the children, I'm overwhelmed with the situation and work and everything, that it was just one less thing that I didn't want to deal with. And we had medical bills that were stacking up like crazy. And so I said, I need someone to kind of relieve that. So I hired an attorney. He's a family friend of mine. He'd help me out through some other situations. And we bring him in to the room where they're talking about putting him into this nursing home. And they're like, oh, you brought somebody with you. And I'm like, I said, yeah, this is my attorney. And he sits down like, oh, you brought an attorney? And I'm like, yeah. And the first thing he said was, Bobby's not leaving this hospital. He's gone to rehab. And they're like, well, we've been, they laid out all these papers and everything looks neat and organized. They've got all, because they're getting ready to, they want to discharge us. And the attorney, he's like, no, he's not going anywhere. So you can put all your stuff away and he's going to stay here. And the look on people's faces, I think, were priceless, because I don't think they expected that from us. I think they expected us, I think most families, if you don't kind of be an advocate and push for things, you get shoved into the system, and I just wasn't about to go into the system. I was like, this is my kid and we're not going to the system, we're going to stay here. So they were shocked. We leave the room. I'm high-fiving myself, think I did a pretty good job, feeling pretty good about it. We get back into the room and they're like, well, we'll have to we need to take this to the director and kind of figure things out. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So the next day comes around and one of the head people comes into Bobby's room and she's like, the best news ever, Bobby got accepted into the rehab program. I just, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, that's one for the team right there. So I think that was kind of the beginning of Bobby, that kind of set the stage, that kind of set us where we needed to be. So we take Bobby into that rehab, and when we wheeled him up there, he still was not responsive. Bobby, you remember going into rehab the first time? No. Bobby doesn't remember a lot. We'll get to Bobby's part, I promise. Toward the end. So we wheel him in, and we walk into the room, and there's this man in the room that I didn't know him, Robert, and nobody else. And Bobby wheels in, and there's a lot of chaos, a lot of things going on. We're moving all the stuff up from down below, and we've been there for months, so it's like moving, like literally moving. So we're getting everything in there, and this man comes over Bobby, and he's praying over him, and he's just, and I don't know if I really, no, I'm like, knows who so I look at their dad, I'm like, who's he? He's like, I don't know. Well, the guy leaves. And then I asked the receptionist, I said, hey, can people just come and go? And they're like, well, not for Bobby. They have to check in down with security, and you can only have so many people. And I'm like, okay, I think there was somebody in the room. And he wasn't on any security cameras. Nobody saw him. Nobody remembers him. Robert and I, his dad, are the only ones that had seen this man come in and pray over Bobby and leave. And I swear it was an angel, because I don't know where he went. I was like, it was crazy. I'm like, oh my word, you've got to be kidding me. And both Robert and we were shocked. And to this day, we'll still be like, remember that guy that came in there? I'm like, I don't know where he came from. Yeah. It was kind of like the license plate kind of thing, just something that happened. And that was our first day in there. And then from there forward, you don't stop, because if he slows down, they kick you out, basically, is the rules. So if you don't continue to progress, then they don't let you, then you have to leave it. We wanted 3 months, and they said 3 months is usually the max. That's when you get the most help. And so we were that was just our mission. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about when he first sat up, we got him into the chair, when he first, sitting on the edge. So Bobby has to learn how to do everything again. His vocal cords are paralyzed. He's got paralysis throughout. His entire body was paralyzed at this point. He just wasn't doing anything. And here we are, we've sort of pushed our way into rehab, and now we got to produce. So now we've gotten to this position to now we have to actually say, hey, we can do this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think we should start by talking about going from the 5th floor, right, was the PICU?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, up to the 8th floor was such a big deal because we heard such great things about the 8th floor. So finally when we were like, oh my gosh, we're at the 8th floor, like this is where things change. And it really did start changing. He started to sit up, he started to do...
and not sitting up like you would think, so...
No, not at all.
We'd like tip him up, and he would stare at his eyes were open a little bit. He would stare through you, not at you.
Super haze look. It was kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, people think when you wake up from a coma, you're just like your eyes just flick open and you can talk and you're all there, and like that is so not how it happens. It is so slow. I'm talking like a crack in the eye and then a little more and a little more, and like it's just not what you think.
Yeah, even when he looked at you, like.
Yeah, there was no purpose in his eyes.
Yeah,
it just looked haze, which was actually scarier than his eyes being closed. But yeah, I don't even know what came first. What did he start doing first? His hands?
I think we started propping him up first, like moving the bed up in a 30-degree angle, because he'd been laying flat for so long.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to wrap him in his legs and his body because the blood flow wasn't used to being up, and we would sit there. This girl's
we got really good.
Yeah, we were really good at ace. We literally ace wrap him from his toes all the way up to underneath his chest bone, and get him all. We looked like a mummy by the time we're done.
We did everything. Like the nurses would come in and be like, "Oh, he's already done." We're like, "Yeah, we already did that."
Yeah, because we were just so excited to get him. We just wanted him going so much, and so we would do a lot of things on our own and get him going. I think the first time he sat up was probably the hardest. I remember wheeling him out into the lobby. And I know for sure for you, I think for all of us, you looked at him and
he didn't look like he looked like Bobby, but
he didn't look
like Bobby. Like it was really, he just kind of like dozed off, and he was in this chair and he had his neck braced and his arms were kind of bound. Like it wasn't Bobby. And I looked at him like, this is what we're going to be taking him home as. Like, are we ready to do this? And we've all worked in healthcare, so we all kind of knew. So we were all very like, we could do it, but we're like, this is not my brother. Like,
well, and then as a parent, then it goes back to me saying, I made a decision to keep him alive. Is this what he would want it? Is this what he would want it to look like? And so he's falling asleep. He gets tired. I gets tired easily. People wait during this. So the biggest thing was, is this what we want him to look like? You know, is this? And Bobby, when you see that picture, you know which picture we're talking about.
Which one?
When you first set up and you've got the neck and you don't look good.
No.
And
terrible.
You look terrible.
Yeah.
I usually look good.
You usually look good.
Oh gosh.
I look bad.
But when he saw that picture, when we went back and thumbed through the picture, he looked at that and he goes, I would not have wanted to be like that. Well, that was the decision when I made that decision. That's the decision I made, was to have him be like that. Well, then it makes you feel like, oh my word, did I make a wrong decision? Selfishly, I want my son alive. What does that look like? You know, what is that going to take? So then you start feeling almost guilty, like, oh, okay, I've saved this kid's life. Now he's in a vegetative state or in no mobility, and is this really what is his quality of life where it would be at a 17-year-old? So there's so many different emotions that are going through. So rehab hit a lot of different levels. It hit levels of emotion, hit levels of getting better, and it just hit levels of knowing that at some point you're going to go home. You can't be there forever, kind of thing. So we did. Oh man, I mean, we learned how to do everything. The yes/no apps. Do you remember doing the yes/no?
Kind of, not really.
Well, when you probably seen videos of him. Yeah. When he couldn't speak, we had a big yes/no on an iPad, and he could, you know, because we didn't know if he was in pain. I mean, he couldn't communicate. He couldn't talk. So there was just so many things. And then we would eat in the room, and he's being fed through a G-tube. And these kids would bring in like burgers, you know, anything that smelled amazing. And poor Bobby would sit there.
He just
and he would just stare at you like, you're seriously going to eat in front of me right now? And then we'd go plug his G-tube with food, and we'd be like, yeah, we're feeding you too. And so, you know, we had things like that. And we would play games in there, and we'd sit and we'd tic-tac-toe and thumb war and, you know, just anything. And he would be responsive, but not purposeful, and
which is weird.
There's such a difference between that we didn't understand. And if the nurses would come in and they'd be like, "Oh, he's not really there," and we were like, "Who knows? He's so
totally there.
We've got this figured out." We go back and look at videos, and
he wasn't there.
He doesn't remember.
He was not there. But I think if we had not been so faithful and so confident and believed in it, and if we'd have thought that he wasn't there, that it would have prolonged his prognosis. So I think us maybe a little naive and going, you guys are nuts, he's still there. And he really was not, which was kind of crazy. But we, I don't know, what's your first time of rehab that you remember? Because there was so much of it.
To be honest,
Any of the rehab?
Well, no, I remember some rehab, but I can't put my finger on it.
Do you remember first time that you woke up, or what was the first
Was
memory
it
of
like
something
sitting
that
up at the edge of the bed? Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that?
you were playing basketball?
Yeah, that
Do you
was
remember
weird.
that on the edge
yeah,
of the bed?
I mean, I remember that, but wait, on the edge of the bed?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't remember
Yeah.
that. Okay.
I was like, what?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Like, we literally are sitting, like, you'd hold him up, we'd have two people behind him, and on each side you'd
Yeah.
protect him because he couldn't hold up, he had no trunk because he'd been in bed for so long. And we were holding him up, and he would, like, could put his arm, put the ball into the
in the hoop.
hoop. And he would look at you like he acknowledged you. At least you felt like he did. You're like, oh, hey, he knows who I am, or something like that. But
But he didn't.
he didn't.
So that's why it was like when the nurses were like, "Oh, he's still in a vegetative state." We're like,
No.
"No, there's no way. Like he's playing thumb war with me, and he can shoot a basketball." And they're like, "No, he's a vegetable." I'm like, "Okay, you're crazy. I know what I'm talking about." Turns out
We were crazy.
we're crazy. They know what they're talking about. So yeah, it's interesting to hear Bobby say that he didn't remember that because
You were like,
don't
you
think
felt
of a
like you were
vegetable like
communicating
that.
with him. Yeah, you
Yeah.
felt like you were having, like you felt like, oh, hey, my brother's kind of come back a little
Like, do the
bit.
hang loose sign, and he would like do the hang loose
yeah,
sign.
or
like,
put
it
his
was
glasses on. Like
so
it was,
weird.
It was weird.
Yeah. So it just, and these are things that we had never been there before, didn't know about, and you're learning as you go, and the dynamics they're insane. Like the amount of, like, just the things that this kid did. When they first go into rehab, they say between 6 and 8 hours a day of rehab. He has to be able to maintain that. And they were not kidding. I mean, 7 o'clock in the morning, they're in there getting him up, getting him dressed, getting him going, and he's got to, and he comes back in, and he would have breaks. And Bobby, he hated going. As soon as they'd bring him back into the room, he'd tap on the bed because he wanted to go to bed. You know, he had little languages that he would do at night. He would go to bed, and like we would take turns on who would be up at night with him. And so he'd tap on he'd pick something up and tap on the railing
all the time,
all night long. And you're just like, I just want to sleep. But his nights and days were mixed up.
Yeah.
So he didn't.
Well, I remember one night I had him, and I was like, I barely just fell asleep, and I woke up, and he's hanging like on the side of the bed. I'm like, I had one job, to watch him, and I fell asleep, and he's hanging off the bed, and I pick him up, and he's looking at me like he's mad at me, and I'm like, I'm sorry,
Well,
I'm tired.
And he was tied to the bed, so we had to restrain him.
Yeah.
Only on one side because the other side didn't work. So the working side had to be restrained. The other side didn't work, so it didn't really matter. But he would go through phases, rubbing his face.
Or he would go like this.
Yeah.
He like, come here, and I was like, yes, Bobby, can I help you?
And then he wouldn't really have anything to say. Like
like-
he was just, because his brain it's firing and it's misfiring. He was going through storming phases. He was just all these different things these dialects that people give you. I mean, it was, I don't know, it was crazy.
I
But
think
go
we
ahead.
should go over like what we do now.
Now I do too,
using
because we're
Bobby
coming
as a
down the last couple
platform.
minutes. So
Yeah. So what
Go
we
ahead.
do now?
Yeah, what are you doing now?
Still
Where? So maybe talk a little bit where you remember kind of coming into it. Where do you
In the
Okay.
chambers. Talk about the chambers.
hyperbaric chambers?
Those are big.
Those are big.
Yeah. So like coming into it, well, there's not like an exact date where I remember it. I just remember it, and it's kind of like I know it, but I don't like remember.
Can't put
it
it to a time,
Yeah,
right?
Yes. So that happened. I started getting better, but I do remember it's when I went outside and played basketball. That was
In the
that was-
wheelchair?
Yeah.
With the wheelchair basketball?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was big. And then just like all the stuff they had me do, where I just would like, they would set up a little basketball hoop in the little area where I did therapy, and I would just play around in there, and then there'd be like things that we would do all together. So like, even some of the other kids in the
In the hospital?
yeah, in the
Yeah.
A4, we'd all do stuff. But that was like basically it, I guess. Cause
How do you feel about where you're at from the time that you left the hospital? So did you walk out of the hospital?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did.
That was a big deal.
That was huge for us because we were like, this kid's going to walk out of here. Like we're not. That's how we're leaving this place. You know,
Yeah.
we came in not walking. We will leave walking.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you feel like rehab's going now? Is it frustrating? Is it easy? Is it what do you feel like?
I feel like it's doing good because I'm way ahead of where I was. Like coming into this, I did nothing because just all the stuff that I did is just nothing. Like walking with like a cane, I used to not be able to do that. Walking with the walker, all these steps, I did nothing. So now, where right now I'm just walking with a cane, and even sometimes without a cane if I want to. It's amazing because. Like,
should you be walking?
Probably not. Hey, it's all good.
It's all good. So,
Better.
what about your hand? How are you feeling about that?
So my hand, it takes a little longer for it to get back together. It's not going as fast as I would want it to, like my walking, but like it's getting there. It's coming back.
That's right. It's doing its thing.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like cognitively? Because I know you've had the most severe brain damage.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I feel like cognitively, I feel like I'm fine. Like I feel like I was, because I'm not the smartest kid. Not gonna lie. But so I can't really tell if I'm the same or if I'm not the same. So it's like it's a struggle between that.
Okay.
But I feel the same because I feel like everything is the same because I'm still bad at what I was bad at. I'm still good at what I was good at.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all good.
Okay. And your neck?
Good.
Do you notice anything about it?
It hurts sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If I have to like look back or
Don't do that.
look all the way back.
Yeah, let's not do that. Okay. What about your vision? Let's talk a little bit about your vision.
So my vision, I have double vision. So like when I'm looking at a spot or looking at something, I see two and not one of. So like say, if I'm looking at that camera, there's one right there, and there's one right there. So there's two of them.
Okay.
They're a little messed up,
but we're working on it.
Yes.
Eye surgery is a possibility.
Yes.
We
we
just
are.
went to the doctor last week, and they said it's getting a little bit better.
Yeah.
So they're going to push off surgery until a few more months to
Till
give it a
he's-
year after his accident and see where it's at, because they're hoping to not give him surgery. But, I mean, if you need it, they can do it.
The 1 year is kind of the mile marker. That's kind of our mile marker. So the eye surgery 1 year, his vocal cords, he's still got paralysis in his vocal cords. That's kind of a 1 year mile marker, whether we do surgery there. There is no surgery that we can do for paralysis on his hands or his legs. So that's just something that we just, sadly, that's just something we have to deal with. How do you, we're going to be getting close here. How do you feel about just being a kid and having to go through, what does that look like for you now?
It's a struggle because you see all these things that your friends are doing and you want to do them. Like at lunch not that long ago, I was at lunch at my house and all my friends, they decided to go jump on a trampoline. And I was just inside eating my lunch bowl.
Watching them jump on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, so there's a few dynamics in your life that are different.
Yeah.
So, but you feel good about it, right?
But I also think we should go over what we do now after what we've been through. So if we see anyone who's been in a major car accident, has a brain injury or a spinal injury or just going through something really traumatic, we always reach out to them because we want to help encourage them, and we'll bring care packages that help benefit us while we're in the hospital, because it's just nice to talk to someone who can relate. Because when someone tells you everything's gonna be okay but they've never been through it, it's hard to not be like, you have no idea what you're talking about. So that's what we do now. We're always on the hunt, like who could use some support? Like
helping people
I
out,
think
paying
that's
it forward.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that helped us.
Yeah. So God just really gave us this platform to just like
Love on people.
Yeah, love on people and show them like having a positive mindset and really having trust that God has got this under control. Like we just try to spread that as much as we can, especially with families going through something where it's hard.
Okay, we have about a 1.5 minute video that I like to show, and we're about out of time. We're at about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So we want to show you a video, and we'd like to welcome you back to this show. Maybe I have a guest coming next Sunday, but Sunday after next, if you'd like to finish up or add more to this conversation, you're 100% welcome to do so.
All right.
Awesome.
So if we could show the video, please. It's still showing me, but I'm waiting for the video to show back. Anyway, I'm Apostle Cecil Hatchett. I'm happy that you wonderful guests came with the family while I'm waiting for the video, so I don't want no dead time on the TV. And so that's what's going on right now. So I'm still waiting for the video to appear. But I'm very happy for all of you having come today. And please come back once again. I'm saying to you, because the invitation is wide open again. It's a very wonderful, heartfelt conversation. And I love it. And I know all the people out there in TV land love it. So please, here we go.
Can you open your eyes? Don't close them. Can you open them?
By the way, Bobby.
Can you open your eyes? Can you say hi to Mom? Can you say hi to your aunts?
Now he's snoring.
He's like...
Is he snoring?
I think so. Oh, he just blinked.
Why did you really just fall asleep on us like that? Mid-conversation? Forget it? Oh, you're moving his arm. He's snoring so.
Damn. You didn't see it? Where's she?
I have it on video. Trying to lick his lips, but he's wearing a cross. We've never seen him bring his arm that high, right? Bobby, can you put your arm down? Oh my gosh. Oh no, don't do that. Wow, that was impressive. All right.
You should be, because I'm freaking out.
That's so good.
And this is after we've been being
Well, I guess that was a video, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bobby, we're very proud of you, and I thank the world of you. And I love you to come back with the family. After, like I said, next week I have a guest coming, but the week after next, you're welcome to come again, and we'll finish up, and you get to open up the phone calls and all the other good stuff, okay?
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you for having
You got a
us.
wonderful mom, and thank the world of you. So you guys keep on praying, keep on pushing the word.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.